these are huge. They're huge mountains of air. And the current one, which is, well, by tomorrow at lunchtime, it's going to be down there probably around 38 south and just on the other side of the date line. But it's very, very strong, as Patricia had mentioned a few minutes ago. And that in itself is a bit of a concern because if you remember some of the things we talked about in the past, is that we do get worried about the northwest side, the northwest part of these big highs, and that very often uh, can develop into what we call the polar dips. We could talk about that later in the week as well. Polar dip is sort of a precursor, if you will, a precursor to a low pressure system. And that is one reason we've been seeing an awful lot of these tropical lows forming, turning as they head south. They go from tropical to subtropical. But nevertheless, they can be very nasty. In fact, they're probably the most dangerous type of lows that we have, more dangerous than the ones that form uh, or that we find in the center of the Tasman, the central Tasman. These storms that come in from the north heading south, a lot of energy is involved with them, and it brings with it a lot of rain, thunderstorms, and not only that, but big seas as well, which makes it very unpleasant, particularly when you haven't been out sailing for a long time. It's not much fun to encounter those conditions when you're just out there a day or two from port. Can be very unpleasant. So that's where it sits right now for the week. This big high is going to be sitting here virtually all week. It will move a little bit. It's a blocking high, but it's not totally stationary, nearly so. We call it quasi-stationary, would be the best term for it. And that technically is a high pressure area that moves less than 5 knots. When that's the case, we call it quasi-stationary. So if we look carefully, as you look carefully at your models, you'll see what I'm talking about on the northwest side. You'll see activity that starts to ramp up. The other thing that you need to be concerned about as you're making your plans, don't forget about the MJO, Madden-Julian oscillation. I haven't heard too many people talk about it recently, but it is active, and this particular week there certainly is activity that's occurring up in the Coral Sea and extending east as the whole system moves to the east and makes its rotation around the Earth 30 to 60 days, almost like clockwork. It just keeps going round and around. But when it happens to be in the Coral Sea and in the area of, say, Vanuatu or New Caledonia, that's when we get to see all sorts of troughs develop and the possibility of low pressure systems, lows forming, and that sort of thing. So you have to be aware of that as well. And I'm not sure what else. Oh, yeah, talking about models. Everybody is certainly into this now, and I think all of you at this point who have listened to me in the past know my view on a model, and that view is really quite simple. A model, as far as I'm concerned, is just an idea. It's an idea of what is going to happen in the future. It's not really anything you can take to the bank. Most people that work in the various Met services and whatnot probably tell you that you better not look at a model past 3 days if you want any accuracy. But given that, doesn't mean it's not useful, because as an idea, it's got a certain percentage of being somewhat accurate, and it gives you an idea of possibly what to expect for the future. And the other thing about models is there's so many of them out now that you really can get confused with conflicting data. And my opinion in this and you can take it for what it's worth, is I think you should just stick with two moles. And my choice for that would be EC NWF, EC NWF, which is the European model, and GFS, which is the American model. Those two. You really don't need more. You can look at more if you want. Uh, Main thing, though, is that these two give you plenty of data. They are much, much more accurate than they used to be. So I think just sticking with them will confuse you less. The idea, hopefully, is that there'll be an agreement. So if you're looking at, say, 5 days out or something like that, it would be very nice if those models were in agreement as to what's going to happen. And if they are in agreement, then the chances of them being accurate are even greater. When they're not in agreement, that's when you really have to put your thinking cap on and go from there. And that's where it comes in handy to look at upper levels and so forth. And I don't think I'm going to get too involved in the upper levels unless people have questions about it, because uh, we've found that over the years now, folks just don't have a lot of patience and getting involved in more technical things. I'm not sure how many people are really quite willing to do that or willing to spend the time to understand what's going on. It's not that you couldn't understand it, it's just that you've got better things to do. So anyway, given that, I think we are going to stick, at least on this radio station, we're going to stick with just the two. We'll stick with EC and GFS. Um, what Patricia had mentioned was this week might be a good idea to look at the different sources of this data. So if we're looking at GFS and EC, a number of outfits out there uh, provide this data, this model data, and one of them, of course, is Predict Wind, which I don't know. I think so many of you get down on your knees and bow towards it. Other people are in love with Windy. A lot of other people are interested in MetView, which is New Zealand's, not New Zealand, but it comes from the University of Victoria here in New Zealand. And it all these sources all really are looking at the same model, but they're different in how they present the information. So a lot of it depends on what you like, how easy it is to use it, uh, how easy it is to interpret what they have to offer. And so what we may do tomorrow is if you folks fire up your computers uh, and go to Windy, as an example. In fact, we'll use Windy. Uh, we'll take a little look at the things that may be useful that Windy has to offer. Uh, there's tons and tons of data that you can get from Windy, just as you can from Predict Wind. But there's just a few things that are really important to look at. And in the interest of making it fairly simple and going from there, I think that's what we'll do. We'll just talk about, we'll look at Windy, we'll pick a few of the little items in Windy that you can go to and I'll go to, and we can talk about what we see and the value of it and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure there's anything else I could add to this. Uh, we have gotten a number of inquiries, actually today, folks that are in the Gulf Harbour area, the Auckland area, even further south, that want to get up to Opua or Marsden. And of course, I've been telling them that, you better have your seasick bags ready and that sort of thing, because the weather is not very pleasant out there, not pleasant at all. It's headwind, the seas are very rough, and it's not going to be comfortable. But a lot of people have just told me they really don't care. They want to get up there, fire up the motor, don't have to worry about sales and just deal with it and get up there. That's fine if that's what you want to do. And hopefully nothing breaks in the meantime. So that's what we're saying. We're saying people wanting to get further north and making their departure from that point, mostly Opua, but a lot from Whangarei or Marsden as well. So, yep, I think that's about it. So I will pass it over to the chief and see what she's got to say and find out if things are in fact working on streaming.
Yes, they are.
Oh, they are, she says. Well, that's good news. So anyway, oh, and don't forget too that we have email, and if you want to email us with questions or topics that you would like covered or refreshed, let's put it that way. I think most of you by now know most of this stuff, and I hate to be repetitive, but some people find it interesting to have a bit of a refresher on some of this stuff. And she's winding it up. It's like an old Model T. Time for me to shut up. So I'll pass it over to the chief.
Actually, a lot of the people listening, and I've got Ulla and Pele over there at surface, and they want to have some decent winds from the southerly quadrant to get north. And Michael and Debbie on Andiamo want some decent winds. But I tell you what, folks, you're just all going to have to be patient. And thank you for the help, you guys, for getting this streaming working. I think I tripped over the cord that goes to the computer behind me where we've got some programs working. Okay, what we're going to do is just talk about radio for a moment. If anybody wants to do a radio check, and don't forget you can do the check any time of the day with Maritime Radio. They're really, really good at doing that because they know that a lot of people are about to get going. And but you can try it now if you like. If anybody wants to call in on the radio, I will switch the microphone up to listen to anybody coming in on the Kaio antenna. So don't worry about it. Just give us a call and we'll see what's going on. Try now. Well, we found that last year people just don't like to pick up the microphone anymore. They would rather click away on a keyboard. But anyway, you've got the rest of the week to give it a go, and we'll certainly be here to answer you and give you a signal report. But don't forget that you are quite close. 8 megahertz frequency is designed to cover reasonably well between here and the islands, which it does. So, but if you're a bit close, then that makes it very difficult. There was something else I wanted to mention tonight. Can't think what it was. Andiamo report that they can hear us on the radio. They're deep in Pomari Bay near Russell. I wonder if they're going. I read in the paper that the Gables, we had a meal there over just after Gabrielle has lost its roof. But there are plenty of other options for a nice meal ashore to get yourselves ready for meals at sea. Okay, 30 knots in the low 40s on Saturday. Well, we were there when we got 50s and 60s, so there, beat that. Yep, we sheltered from Gabrielle in Assassination Cove, which we would never ever do again. We were all quite cosy until somebody anchored up ahead of us and kept dragging onto us until finally they pulled our anchor chain up and pulled subsequently our anchor up. So yeah, we'd never go there again. We would find somewhere nice and secluded and not mentioned in any book. We learned a lot in that episode with Gabrielle, and that was to be totally by ourselves next time. Okay, I can't think of what it was that I was going to mention, but yes, we'll be on again tomorrow at this time, and I'll turn off the streaming. But if you want to tell your friends and family about the streaming, just tell them to go onto our website, which is www.ghradio.co.nz, and just subscribe to the streaming It doesn't cost you anything. It just means that you get an email to tell you when there is the latest streaming on. And I've just done that for Weather Watch. I don't know whether you people know about Weather Watch. Philip Duncan, absolutely fantastic video that he has every day. And today he had two because he talked about it was the sort of the climate one for the month of May, and he talked about how we are now at the end of neutral and going into El Nino and that sort of stuff and what it means. But weatherwatch.com, it's on YouTube, and again, if you subscribe, then you get a notification, theoretically, that when the new one comes out. So that's really, really good. He explains things superbly well, and he does know about you folk that are looking for winds. And he's quite staggered that we've got a whole week of northerly quadrant, northeast quadrant winds, because it's quite unusual for the month of May. So aren't you lucky? Boy, it is just a continuation of the really shitty weather we've had all summer. All right, that's it from me. I'm just chuckling at what Michael said about finding a storm acreage by yourself up in the Bay of Islands, but we've got our ideas, Michael. Not that we hope for another one. And yes, we've got a couple of other things that we're doing. For example, we're putting some nice big heavy plates underneath our forward cleats, and all sorts of other ideas for dealing with the winds that we got over Gabrielle. Okay, cheers everybody, and we'll look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. And as I say, just give us an email. Please put your boat name in the subject line, because it makes it a lot easier for us to find things. So boat name in the subject line. And if you are going to be checking in next week when you go, if you go next week, it's sort of looking better the week after, I think. But anyway, if you are going and you're going to be checking in, it would be good to know what sort of boat you are, how many on board, what your emergency contact details are, and we can go from there. So that's it from us. Good night, everybody, and we'll talk again tomorrow.